The Bait by Jansen Davies. Chapter 1. Icebound Judgment. They called the planet Morris, not in reverence, but out of obligation, a name recorded somewhere in a ship manifest. To the rest of the galaxy, it was a frozen penal colony, a cosmic garbage heap wrapped in permafrost. For the residents, it was simply home, brutal, bitter, and indifferent. Wind howled across serrated ridges and buried wreckage deep beneath ancient snowfall. There were no cities here, only scattered tribal encampments, huddled clusters hidden from aerial scans and wandering eyes. They built with scavenged metal and frozen bones. Heat came from repurposed ship cores, sputtering reactors barely able to light a single dwelling. The castaways, alien, half-mutant, unclassified, had been deemed unredeemable, sentenced to disappear among the glaciers. Over time, they adapted, not softened. Each generation raised by survivors, not citizens. Survival was the only law, and vengeance its closest religion. Tribes formed in the vacuum left by law, bound not by ideology, but by necessity, protection, pride, and power. War parties roamed the terrain like ghosts with rifles and homemade blades. Their goals weren't conquest, they hunted for signs of weakness. A missing patrol, an unguarded supply cache, a chance to inflict pain, assert dominance, and carve legacy into the snow. This wasn't war in the way outsiders understood it. No declarations, no proclamations. Only the shimmer of blades in falling snow, and blood vanishing before it froze. And then, as Varroc's 10-member hunting party crested the eastern ridge, they saw her. A lone woman, white-haired and still, sitting in a clearing like a shadow misplaced. And with her arrival, everything changed. Chapter 2. The Woman in the Snow. The hunting party moved like vapor across the tundra, 10 shapes against a horizon of ice, each dressed in scavenged insulation, pieces of fur, and jagged armor pulled from wrecked freighters. Their weapons were handmade but honed to brutal efficiency. Raiders by necessity, predators by design. Their leader, Varroc, was a somber being with large, dark eyes above his frost-bitten cheeks. Scars mapped his face like constellations, each one earned in a skirmish no outsider could name. Around him, his party walked in silence, alert and hungry for signs of motion. Tracks, heat, the subtle scent of fear. The planet's surface had no mercy. Visibility came and went with gusts of powdered snow. Temp drops shattered exposed metal. Even the air had teeth here, and it bit lungs without pause. The party's goal wasn't sustenance, it was control. To catch wind of another tribe, to shadow them, flank them, steal, or kill. The politics of Morris weren't won in council meetings. They were carved with blades and sealed in blood. And then they saw her, sitting in the middle of a clearing, surrounded by nothing but silence and snow. A human woman, hair blinding white, clothes simple, almost ceremonial. Her presence was a contradiction wrapped in quiet. No tracks led to her, no beacons signaled distress. Humans did not walk here. They flew overhead in ships, dropped their cargo, then left. Always left. Varroc raised a hand. The party halted instantly. She didn't move. The woman sat perfectly still, her white hair mingling with the icy wind, body poised with a calm that unnerved even hardened killers. She wasn't shivering, despite the blistering cold. Her eyes were open but distant, as if she'd seen too much already. Varroc stopped 10 paces from her, his blade pulsed with latent heat, a warning rather than a threat. "You're human," he said flatly. "There are no humans here." Her gaze flicked toward him, slow and deliberate. "Number naught, usually." Her voice was melodic, like breath over frost. The rest of the war party spread out in a slow crescent, blades drawn, watching her from the edges of caution and disbelief. Most had never spoken to a human. Some had only seen them in the moments before being loaded onto this cursed planet. "Why are you here?" Varrock asked. "I was left," she replied. "Another tribe sent me. They hoped someone like you would find me and follow." She paused, her hand resting on her chest. "I am the bait." Silence. Varrock's fingers twitched on his hilt. "And you told me that why?" "Because I can't lie." The war party stirred. "Can't or won't?" "Can't," she repeated. "I'm an empath." The word hung in the air like smoke. "I was part of a crew. We dropped off our shipment. Your kind," she said without malice. "Prisoners, outcasts, the broken." The ship was leaving. It failed. I survived. She didn't speak like a victim, more like someone fulfilling a task. I was there to keep passengers calm. They always put empaths on board. Makes the voyage easier. Less fear, less rage. Empaths absorb it. Varrock stepped closer. "That ship, where is it?" "Gone. It fell into a ravine 20 clicks south. You won't find survivors?" "Your crew," another warrior spat. "Not one of us." "I'm not," she said calmly. "What's your name?" Varrock asked. "Idera." Another silence. They circled her now. Some argued, "Take her." Others saw danger. One voice hissed, "We should end it." Quietly. Another argued that killing a human would bring hell from above. The Federations would melt our snow with plasma. "She's lying," someone snapped. "I can't," she replied. "Test me." Varrock watched her. Something beneath her voice resonated, like music shaped for the soul. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't pleading. Just present. He exhaled slowly. "We take her," he said. "No one kills. No one speaks of this beyond the ridge." Idera stood. The wind pulled her hair like trailing banners. She walked without hesitation, moving alongside them, untouched by threat. And behind her, in the silence, the snow fell deeper, as though covering something freshly disturbed. Chapter 3. Truth Without Shields. The journey back was quiet. Idera didn't speak unless spoken to, but her silence wasn't defensive. It was intentional, like a space left open for meaning to fill. She walked with quiet elegance, never stumbling. The cold seemed to bend around her, as though it feared what might happen if it touched her skin. The village emerged from the ice like a mirage, domed shelters stitched from wreckage, thermal vents piping ghostly vapor into the sky, and clusters of hardened survivors who had long stopped dreaming. When Varrock's party arrived with her, eyes gathered behind the shadows. Children peered from gaps in walls. Warriors reached for weapons. Elders frowned. A human presence meant trouble. Always had. Varrock made the announcement brief. "She's crew, survivor, empath." That word unsettled them. They placed her near the fire pit in the central clearing, visible, but not welcomed. And she made no protest. Hours passed. Then came a sharp cry. A boy, small and trembling, clutched his leg, eyes wide with terror. He stammered through tears. He'd been bitten. A snow snake, fast, venomous, lethal if untreated. His mother ran to him, already despairing. Idera rose gently. Without asking, she knelt beside him, her hand hovering just above the wound. Her breathing slowed. The air grew strangely still. Then the child's sobs faded, his grip loosened, his breathing steadied. She hadn't cured him, but the pain was gone. The tribe stared. His mother cried, not from fear anymore, but relief. "She's dangerous," someone muttered. "No one should have that kind of power." "She saved him," another replied. Idera said nothing. She returned to her corner, sat by the fire again, her eyes closed as if listening to something far off. Then the confessions began. One by one, individuals approached her, not with demands but with stories. An old warrior spoke of a brother killed in a raid 30 years ago. He'd never mentioned it. A healer told her she once abandoned a patient to save her own child. Even Varuk stood behind a frost-crusted pillar, watching. His people, stone-hearted and silent for generations, were opening because of her. She didn't ask questions. She just felt. Varuk paced that night, blades sheathed, mind spiraling. The empath was unraveling things carefully sewn shut. And while that meant healing, it also meant vulnerability. She'd said she couldn't lie, but was that protection or threat? Chapter 4. The Stranger Among Them. She sat in silence, not withdrawn but observant, like a shadow learning the rhythm of firelight and footsteps. In the center of the village, the flames danced in a pit carved from scrap metal. Around her, alien figures moved through routine, mending gear, tending to frost-bitten limbs, checking perimeter signals. She didn't interrupt. She absorbed. The tribe still whispered. Some feared her. Others were confused by her presence. A few, mostly children, stared with fascination. One of them, Neril, a wide-eyed girl with frost-cracked fingertips, approached. "Are you warm?" she asked shyly. Idera smiled gently. "I am, thank you." The girl hesitated. Then she reached out and placed her hand against Idera's shoulder. A soft gasp escaped her lips. "You feel like a sky breath." That night, more came, some with questions, others with confessions. A hardened scout spoke of his terror when ambushed last moon cycle, something he'd buried even from his closest kin. A widow who hadn't spoken in years asked Idera if grief had texture. She said yes, it felt like silver ice. Varric watched from a distance, arms crossed, brow tense. The woman was doing something to them, not with words but presence. Emotional thawing in a village bred for survival and silence. Then she did something more. Quiet, barely noticed. A wounded sentry limped into the clearing, his leg infected from a blast wound he'd refused to treat. Too stubborn, too proud. Idera stood, touched the skin around the gash, never the wound itself, and closed her eyes. The pain vanished. He said nothing, but later, when questioned, admitted the truth. "She took the ache," he whispered. "I don't know how, but it's gone." Word spread. She was no longer just human. She was something else, a balm in the blizzard, a whisper of peace in a world built on hardship. Still, Varric brooded. Her influence was growing, rapidly. The council began discussing her arrival behind closed steel doors. They couldn't deny her goodness, but they also couldn't quantify it, and that terrified them. How do you govern what you can't control? And deep beneath Varric's doubt, a darker fear churned, that they could no longer imagine life without her. Chapter 5. Echoes Unburied. It began with whispers. At first, quiet exchanges, brief confessions murmured into Idira's ear when the fire waned and shadows deepened. Then came stories, long, tangled ones, histories the tribe had forgotten or ignored. She listened to every word. No judgment, no interruption. A grizzled hunter named Curvant spoke of guilt that haunted him since he left a wounded comrade behind during a raid. He'd buried the memory beneath ice and pride, but now it spilled out, his voice trembling. Another confessed to sabotaging a rival's food cache during the last frost season, not out of survival, but jealousy. Idera didn't flinch. She absorbed everything. Not just the words, but the emotions behind them. Anger, shame, grief. Each truth braided itself into the empath's soul, and when she spoke, it was never to condemn, only to reflect what had been hidden. Her presence had cracked open a vault no one remembered locking. Varrock grew restless, watching, waiting, debating. She had become the soul of the village, and yet she hadn't asked for it. That was the most disarming part. Her leadership came through reflection, not assertion. The council convened under frost-flecked tarps. Arguments flared. She's making our warriors soft. No, she's healing them. She could tear this place apart. She's already holding it together. Varrock said little. He didn't fear her power. He feared what it revealed. That they were not monsters. That they were not finished. Idera sat near the central fire. Neril curled beside her, a quiet protector. Around them, stories blossomed. Vengeance slowed. The village felt lighter. It unnerved everyone. Then Idera began carving something, a small figurine from icebone, a figure wrapped in wind. No one understood its meaning, until she whispered to Varrock, "This is who you were, before you were broken." He couldn't speak. That night, for the first time in years, Varrock dreamed, not of war, but of stars, and the home he never spoke of. Chapter 6. A Leader's Dilemma. The village had changed. The fires burned warmer. Conversations lingered past dusk. Children laughed with voices that had long been silent. And at the center of it all sat Idera, not a queen, not a warrior, not a healer, just a presence. One that soothed the ghosts this planet refused to bury. But with every softened heart came unease in Varrock's. He stood on the ridge overlooking the encampment, wind slicing at his coat. His people were opening, changing, and while it might look like peace, he feared it was vulnerability. In the war room, once filled with sharp plans and cold strategy, now hung questions. Do we protect her? Do we surrender her to the next transport crew? Do we hide her, honor her, use her? They knew the danger. Idera was not one of them. If the next ship found her alive, they might suspect foul play. They might reduce the village to ash. Varrock had seen it happen. Entire encampments burned for less. But she had become indispensable. She didn't lead, she inspired. And the tribe leaned into her light like sunflowers stretching toward warmth they never knew existed. Varrock approached her by the fire. "You've made them softer," he said. "I've made them myself," she replied. He hesitated, then sat beside her. "You've undone years of survival instinct. Survival isn't the same as living." She didn't flinch, didn't accuse, just stated truth. And Varrock found himself without a retort. He stared into the flames. "I'm responsible for them," he said finally. "I can't protect against what I don't understand." "I'm not asking for protection," she said quietly. "I'm asking for trust." That word echoed. Trust was foreign currency here. Rare. Risky. Later that night, Varrock stood alone in the war hall, staring at the ice map carved into the stone floor. Lines of raids, borders, supply caches. And then he reached down. With a single finger, he scraped away the line that separated his tribe from the next. It was an act not of surrender, but of possibility. In his heart, a shift began, slow, tremulous, but real. And far above in the blizzard, something watched, something ancient. The winds knew what was coming. Idera wasn't meant to change a village. She was meant to change everything. Chapter 7. The Visitor. It happened at dawn. While the mist still clung to rooftops and frost glazed the bones piled along the eastern wall, a distant figure appeared on the horizon, alone, moving slowly, deliberately. It waved a flag made of stitched rags and dyed cloth. Colors signaled peace, but no one trusted colors here. Varrock was summoned immediately. From the watchtower, they watched the stranger approach. Not a scout, not a thief, a leader, recognizable from old skirmishes, even beneath layers of fur and armor. Garin, chieftain of the rival tribe that roamed the volcanic trenches. He carried no weapons. His guards remained hidden behind the ridge, likely watching every movement from scope and scanner. "I come with treaty," Garin announced as he entered the outer ring of camp. "Not war." The council gathered, wary and rigid. Even peace could be a weapon. Garin bowed, not deeply, but enough to make silence settle thick. "We want the human woman." That sentence turned the fire pit cold. Garin explained, since Idera was taken away, their tribe's fragile unity had shattered. Internal raids, scarce cooperation, near mutinies. She'd not only stabilized them, she'd held them together. "She is not yours to keep," he said. "She is not anyone's." Varric didn't answer right away. Garin offered trade, furs, weaponry, fuel cells, even encrypted maps, priceless assets on this planet. Still, Varric refused. "You mistake empathy for ownership," he said. "She's not leverage." Voices rose, guards bristled. The tribes hadn't exchanged anything but blood for decades. This dialogue was unthinkable. Idera entered the circle. She walked quietly, stepped between warriors, faced Garin with a gaze absent of accusation. "You wish to restore what you've lost," she said softly. "But have you considered why you lost it?" Garin faltered. "You leaned on me," she continued, "not each other. And when I was gone, you didn't have the bonds to stand alone." "You are the bond," he said. She turned to Varric's council. "Both tribes are hurting," she said. "Both need connection, not transaction." The circle fell silent. "I propose unification." The words struck like thunder. Tribal unity hadn't existed in over a century. Too much betrayal, too much blood. "Impossible," Garin said. But Idera stepped forward. She took Varric's hand, took Garin's, held them firm, then placed their palms together. Emotion surged, not magic, not psychic force, just pure, unfiltered feeling. Loss, rage, hope, fear, trust. Their hands didn't pull apart. For a moment, the snow seemed to hold its breath. Then, softly, Varric spoke. "Let's do what no tribe dared." They nodded. From the edges of the gathering, warriors lowered their weapons. Council members leaned in. Children watched history unfold. And somewhere beneath the surface, the planet stirred. Something ancient, approving. Chapter 8. The Edge of Conflict. Peace didn't come with drums or celebration. It came with silence, uncertain, tentative. The gesture had been made. Varric and Garin, hands clasped, witnessed by fire and frost. But the weight of centuries couldn't be brushed aside by one act. It lingered in wary glances, in weapons that remained unsheathed. The council met beneath the northern shelter, wind shrieking through gaps in the metal. Elders from both tribes sat across from each other for the first time in living memory. They didn't speak of joy. They spoke of risk. What happens when transport ships return? What will the outsiders see? Do we look like traitors or visionaries? Even Varric sat rigid, fingers twitching against the hilt of his ceremonial blade. Garin offered trade routes, shared patrols, merged supplies. But logistical unity was not emotional unity. Idera remained at the center, listening, absorbing the currents of doubt and hope. She didn't push. She only reminded. "You chose contact," she said. "Now choose trust." Despite the uncertainty, the tribes acted. Scout units were merged. Children were taught in circles where names once sparked suspicion. Hearths burned brighter. Trade surged. But unity bred new challenges. A third tribe, The Sulcari, frost-bound nomads, sent a message carved into stone. Disband or be hunted. The message wasn't defiance, it was desperation. The Sulcari feared absorption. They feared vulnerability. Their leader, a flame-eyed brute named Rasan, had built an empire of cruelty among the glaciers. If he sensed weakness, blood would follow. The council trembled. Idera stepped forward again. We didn't begin unity to create war. We began it to create space. She proposed something daring. Open dialogue with Sulcari messengers. Not to force alliance, but to show what had changed. Varrock resisted. They won't listen, he said. Then let them witness, Idera replied. Let them see hearts instead of scars. Preparations began. A convoy, a neutral zone, a chance to offer peace without expecting surrender. And all the while whispers spread. That Morris, forgotten planet, cruel and cold, might be changing. Not because of armies, but because one woman dared to hold truth without shields, and dared others to do the same. Chapter 9. Her Proposal. The council chamber was thick with hesitation, not in silence, but in breath. Shallow, staggered. The kind that clings to the lungs when something enormous begins, and no one knows what shape it will take. Varrock stood with arms folded. Garin leaned forward, skeptical but curious. Around them sat elders, scouts, survivors, leaders by necessity. They'd fought each other, watched comrades fall. Unity had never been a word they spoke aloud. Then Idera stepped into the center. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't command. She simply asked, "Unite." The word hung in the air like fire in snowfall. "Unite the tribes," she repeated, "not through territory, not through trade, through truth." "You speak of peace like it's inevitable," Garin said. "It's not." "I speak of choice," she replied. Tensions flared. "This has never been done," Varrock said. "Not in generations." "Which makes it the perfect time." She explained what had already begun. Stories had been shared. Empathy had bloomed. Even distrust had found space to breathe. All they needed now was agreement, not in action, but in intent. Varrock looked to Garin. "And if we refuse?" "Then you return to war," Idera said calmly. "You fracture, bleed, repeat." A long pause. No one spoke. The only sound was the whisper of wind against frozen walls. Then Idera stepped forward. She took Varrock's hand. He didn't resist. She took Garin's hand. His fingers twitched, but stayed firm. Then, without ceremony, she placed their palms together again. At first, nothing. Then, a pulse. Not seen, not heard, felt. Two leaders, two wounds, two tribes, joined in a moment that defied every bone-deep tradition. The chamber sat motionless, and then, ripples. One elder stepped forward and placed his own palm on theirs. Another followed, a scout, a healer, a child. One by one they connected, not with weapons or contracts, but with contact. Varrock exhaled. "Then it's done." Garin nodded. "Let it be written." And somewhere in the snow beyond the village, long frozen earth cracked softly, as if the planet itself had been waiting. For the first time in Morris's history, unity wasn't a myth. It was reality. Because of a woman who couldn't lie, because of a tribe that chose to listen, because of a moment where hands met instead of swords. Chapter 10. Becoming one. The air in Morris had changed. Not warmer, never that, but softer. Fires burned in shared circles. Scouts moved in mixed units. Children from rival lineages learned the names of stars together. The tribe, unified, was no longer driven by fear, but by feeling. Idera didn't claim a throne. She sat where she always had, the corner by the fire, listening. But everyone leaned toward her now. Leaders sought her presence before decisions. Warriors found courage not in sharpened steel, but in the quiet grace of her gaze. Other tribes watched, at first with suspicion, then curiosity. One by one they sent envoys, some came bartering, others came with stories. Few left unchanged. Even Rasain and the Sulkari couldn't stem the flow of unity. They didn't join because they were conquered. They joined because they wanted to be part of something they couldn't name, but could feel. Soon maps were redrawn, not with borders, but with circles, each one representing a tribe that chose connection over control. And at the center, an empath, a survivor, a human. Idera never asked for power. She simply gave others permission to feel theirs. Eventually, the elders gathered again. They proposed a title, not out of hierarchy, but recognition. Queen. She laughed softly. Then let my crown be made of wind, she said, and let it whisper truths we're afraid to hear. Chapter 11. The Bait No More. She had been bait, left alone, used as a lure, a pawn in a war of shadows. But her refusal to lie, her ability to feel, turned a trap into transformation. Morris, once a penal planet, became a beacon, not of perfection, not of purity, but of possibility. They would still struggle, hurt, heal, but they would do it together. And as Idera stood beneath the aurora-lit sky, her breath fogging softly in the midnight air, she whispered to herself, I was sent to be found. Now I am followed. The ice did not crack. It bloomed. The end. Please like and subscribe in the name of empathy.